Hey everyone, before we drift into the fascinating realm of what ifs, where are you listening from and what time is it where you are? Maybe you're nestled in bed, the blankets pulled up just right, or perhaps you're winding down after a long day, a gentle quiet settling in around you. Wherever you are, take a moment to really feel it. The soft pillow cradling your head, the steady rhythm of your breath, the comforting weight that holds you to your seat or mattress. This, you might think, is just you, comfortably at rest. But what if I told you that the very force holding you down right now, the unseen hand that keeps your coffee mug on the table and the moon in the sky, could vanish in an instant? What if the constant, gentle tug that anchors our entire world suddenly disappeared? Join us on a calming yet captivating journey as we explore a reality where the fundamental rules are broken, if only for a fleeting moment. We're going to imagine the impossible, unravel the chaos, and ask the ultimate question: what would happen if gravity simply turned off for 5 seconds? Let's begin by settling into the familiar. Imagine the quiet hum of an ordinary morning, anywhere in the world, as the sun begins to climb. You're waking up, perhaps the gentle quiet of your surroundings still lingering. You shift in your bed, feeling the soft mattress conform beneath you. When you decide to rise, your feet meet the solid floor. You don't float to the ceiling, you stand. You walk to the kitchen, pour yourself a glass of water, and watch as the liquid obediently flows from the tap into the glass. The water stays in the glass. When you set the glass down, it remains on the counter. Everything you do, every conscious and unconscious movement, every single moment of your existence on Earth, is defined by an invisible, tireless force. That force, of course, is gravity. We rarely give it a second thought, do we? It's simply there. Like the air we breathe, gravity is so fundamental, so constant, that its presence fades into the background of our perception. But try for a moment to imagine a single day without air. The immediate, suffocating panic. Now try to imagine a day without gravity. The mind struggles, doesn't it? That's because gravity is not just a force that pulls things down. It is the very bedrock upon which our reality, our civilization, and even our biology have been built. It is the silent architect of our world, the unsung hero that enables everything from the grand ballet of planets to the simple act of taking a step. Think about how many times today you've implicitly relied on gravity. You've probably picked something up and felt its weight. You've seen something fall. Perhaps you've watched a child joyfully bounce a ball, or observed water cascading down a waterfall. Every single one of these actions, from the most mundane to the most majestic, is a testament to gravity's unwavering presence. It's why our coffee stays in its mug, why the trees grow upwards from the ground instead of spiraling into space, and why the vast churning oceans remain contained within their basins. Without gravity, the very concept of up and down would be meaningless, utterly devoid of the inherent directionality we take for granted. So what exactly is this invisible embrace? At its most basic, and as famously described by Sir Isaac Newton over 300 years ago, gravity is a force of attraction between any two objects that have mass. The more mass an object has, the stronger its gravitational pull. The closer two objects are, the stronger the pull between them. It's why you're not noticeably pulled towards your phone, but you are very noticeably pulled towards the colossal mass of the Earth. The Earth, being unimaginably more massive than anything else in our immediate vicinity, exerts a dominant gravitational pull on everything on or near its surface. It's why we don't float off into space, why objects accelerate downwards when dropped, and why there's a predictable order to the world around us. But physics, as it often does, evolved. Albert Einstein, in the early 20th century, presented a more profound and elegant understanding of gravity with his theory of general relativity. Instead of viewing gravity as a mysterious force pulling objects together, Einstein proposed something far more mind-bending, that gravity is not a force at all, but rather a curvature in the fabric of space-time itself. Imagine a large, perfectly taut rubber sheet stretched out flat. Now place a heavy bowling ball in the center of that sheet. What happens? The bowling ball creates a dent or a curve in the rubber sheet. Now if you roll a smaller marble across the sheet, what will it do? It won't just roll in a straight line. It will curve inwards, drawn towards the bowling ball, not because the bowling ball is pulling it with a magical rope, but because the very surface it's rolling on has been warped by the heavy object. This isn't just an analogy, it's a simplification of the incredibly complex mathematical framework Einstein developed. In this analogy, the rubber sheet is space-time, the four-dimensional fabric that interweaves the three dimensions of space with the one dimension of time. The bowling ball is a massive object like the Earth, or the Sun, or a star. Its immense mass creates a dent in this space-time fabric. A smaller object like you, a falling apple, or even a satellite orbiting the Earth, isn't being pulled by Earth's gravity in the traditional sense. It's simply following the curves and dents that Earth's immense mass creates in the space-time around it. This concept elegantly explains not just why things fall, but also why planets orbit the Sun in precise paths, and why light, which has no mass, can still be bent by massive objects, because it's traveling through curved space-time. It's a subtle but crucial distinction, moving gravity from an invisible string to the very warp and weft of our reality. The gravitational field is everywhere, encompassing everything, a continuous, pervasive influence that defines the very geometry of the universe we inhabit. This curvature of space-time is constant and ubiquitous. From the deepest ocean trench to the highest peak of any mountain, the Earth's gravitational embrace is always there, always shaping, always dictating. While there are minute variations in gravitational pull depending on altitude and local geological composition, for all intents and purposes of our daily lives, gravity is an unwavering, ever-present constant. It doesn't switch off, it doesn't take breaks, and it certainly doesn't pick and choose what it affects. Every single atom, every molecule, every collection of matter with mass within its sphere of influence is subject to its relentless defining presence. It is the most powerful of the fundamental forces over astronomical distances, reigning supreme in the large-scale structure of the universe, dwarfing even electromagnetism or the nuclear forces in its grand cosmic influence. Let's delve deeper into how gravity weaves itself into the very fabric of our daily existence, often in ways we never consciously acknowledge. Consider the simple act of walking or standing. Your skeletal structure, your muscles, your entire sense of balance are meticulously designed to operate within a 1G environment. That is, one Earth gravity. When you take a step, your foot pushes against the ground, and the ground pushes back, allowing you to propel yourself forward. This pushing and pushing back, this fundamental interaction, is entirely dependent on gravity keeping you firmly planted. Without gravity, every step would be an uncontrollable, slow-motion leap. You couldn't push off anything effectively, and your body, accustomed to the constant downward pull, would be disoriented beyond measure. Our inner ear, responsible for our sense of balance, relies on the subtle shifts of fluid against tiny hairs, themselves responding to gravity's pull, to tell our brain which way is up and down. This intricate biological compass, honed over millions of years of evolution in a gravitational field, would instantly be rendered useless. In the microgravity environment of space, astronauts experience profound disorientation, nausea, and require months of rigorous training and adaptation to cope with the absence of this fundamental reference point. Imagine that happening to everyone, everywhere, in an instant, not just in a controlled environment, but amidst their everyday lives. Even the simple act of sitting down and remaining seated, something we do countless times a day without thought, is only possible because gravity keeps us anchored to our chair. Without it, the moment you released your grip on the arms, you would simply drift. Then there's water and all other fluids. Gravity is the ultimate sculptor of Earth's hydrology, a constant force that orchestrates the movement and distribution of every drop of liquid on our planet. It pulls water downwards, forming rivers that carve canyons through ancient landscapes, tirelessly eroding rock and carrying sediment to the seas. It collects water in vast lakes, deep reservoirs, and fills the immense basins of our oceans, containing these gargantuan bodies of water within their geographical boundaries. Rain falls from the clouds, pulled back to Earth by gravity to replenish these bodies of water, completing the vital water cycle. This continuous process of evaporation, condensation, and precipitation is fundamentally driven by gravity. Without gravity, water would simply disperse, forming chaotic, free-floating blobs or slowly expanding outwards from its sources into the vacuum of space, never collecting, never flowing, never forming the life-sustaining bodies we depend on. Our plumbing systems, from the drains in your sink to the complex municipal water pipes that crisscross cities, rely entirely on gravity to direct the flow of water and waste. Water towers are built high because gravity then provides the pressure to deliver water to homes below. Without it, your taps would spray haphazardly, unable to draw water effectively, and your sewage system would become a nightmarish, stagnant network of unmoving fluids. Even the simple act of pouring a glass of water, watching the liquid conform to the shape of the container, is a gravitational dance. And what about the atmosphere? That breathable, protective envelope of air that surrounds our planet, shielding us from the harsh vacuum of space and the sun's deadly radiation. It too is held firmly in place by Earth's gravity. The incredible weight of the atmosphere, pressing down on every square inch of the Earth's surface, with a force equivalent to 10 tons per square meter, creates the atmospheric pressure necessary for our lungs to function, for sound to travel, and for weather systems to form. Without gravity, the gases that make up our atmosphere, primarily nitrogen, oxygen, argon, carbon dioxide, would simply expand outwards, dissipating into the vast emptiness of space. Within moments, the breathable air we rely on would be gone, replaced by a suffocating vacuum, stripping Earth of its protective shield and leaving all life exposed and gasping for a breath that would never come. The very winds we feel, the clouds we see, the storms that rage across continents, all are complex dances choreographed by the interplay of temperature differences, pressure gradients, and gravity's constant pull, which keeps the air mass grounded and swirling. Our buildings and structures, the very framework of our civilization, are monumental testaments to our constant battle against gravity. Architects and engineers spend countless hours calculating stresses, strains, and loads, meticulously designing foundations, columns, beams, arches, and trusses to bear the immense downward forces imposed by gravity. Every skyscraper stands as a defiance of this downward force, its very existence a triumph of structural integrity over gravitational pull. Bridges are engineered marvels designed to carry immense weight across vast spans, distributing gravitational stresses evenly to prevent collapse. Dams hold back colossal volumes of water, their strength measured against the incredible pressure exerted by gravity on that liquid mass. If gravity were to disappear, even for a moment, the forces that hold these structures together, the compression holding bricks in place, the tension in steel cables, the very concept of a load-bearing wall, would instantaneously vanish or reverse. A building designed to be compressed downwards would suddenly experience internal expansive forces, leading to immediate and catastrophic structural failures. Imagine the colossal strain and then the immediate explosive decompression of a massive concrete and steel skyscraper built to withstand constant downward pressure, suddenly relieved of that pressure and subjected to its own internal forces of expansion, twisting and tearing apart from within. Even our own biology is profoundly shaped by gravity. Our skeletons are robust enough to support our body weight, providing a framework that prevents us from collapsing into a jelly-like mass. Our muscles are strong, constantly working, even subtly, to maintain posture and resist the downward pull. Our hearts are powerful pumps, specifically evolved to push blood upwards against gravity to reach our brains, ensuring constant oxygenation. In the absence of gravity, this system would be thrown into disarray. Blood would pool in our upper bodies, leading to facial swelling and disorienting lightheadedness. Our bones, which remain strong due to the constant stresses of gravity, would begin to lose density at an alarming rate, similar to what astronauts experience in prolonged microgravity environments, risking brittle fractures upon any sudden impact. The very growth patterns of plants, with roots extending downwards into the soil and stems reaching determinedly towards the sun, are guided by gravitropism, their innate response to gravity. Without gravity, plants would struggle to orient themselves, growing in chaotic tangles. Every cell, every organ, every system in our bodies, from the flow of fluids to the maintenance of muscle mass, is in some way configured for life in a gravitational field. Consider the countless everyday objects around you, the book on your nightstand, the remote control resting on the coffee table, the picture frame hanging on your wall, all are held firmly in place by gravity or by systems designed to counteract gravity, like the hook for the picture frame, which still relies on the wall being down. If you pick up a cup and then let go, it falls. This is not magic, it's gravity at work, predictably pulling it towards the Earth's center. Without it, that cup wouldn't fall. It would drift, perhaps slowly, perhaps quickly, depending on any tiny air currents or incidental pushes, but it would not return to the surface below. The simple act of pouring sugar into your tea, watching the grains obediently settle at the bottom, that's gravity. The way dust particles eventually settle on surfaces, defying air currents over time, that's gravity. Our homes, our workplaces, our entire environment are built on the fundamental assumption that things stay where you put them or fall predictably when dropped. Imagine cooking if ingredients floated away, or trying to write if your pen and paper drifted off at the slightest nudge. The world would become an utterly unmanageable free-for-all of unanchored objects. Even sports and recreation, seemingly simple acts of play and leisure, are deeply intertwined with gravity, from the majestic arc of a thrown football to the precise trajectory of a basketball shot, from the explosive power of a downhill skier carving through snow to the controlled descent of a rock climber scaling a sheer cliff face. Gravity is the defining force that dictates the physics of movement. Athletes train their bodies to harness or counteract gravity, to jump higher, to run faster, to maintain balance, to exert optimal force against the ground. A world without gravity would render most sports unrecognizable or impossible. Imagine a marathon where runners simply floated away with each step, or a swimming pool where water formed unmanageable globules, making the very act of swimming futile. The grace of a dancer, the power of a weightlifter, the precision of a diver, all are performances intricately choreographed with gravity. On a larger scale, gravity is the cosmic glue that holds our solar system together. It's what keeps the Earth and all the other planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, locked in their predictable, elliptical orbits around the colossal mass of the Sun. Without the Sun's immense gravitational pull, Earth would simply fly off into the cold, dark vacuum of interstellar space, becoming a rogue planet adrift, a lonely wanderer lost in the cosmic void, and it's gravity that dictates the elegant gravitational dance between the Earth and its moon, leading to the mesmerizing rise and fall of our tides. The moon's gravity subtly pulls on Earth's oceans, creating bulges of water on both the side closest to the moon and the side furthest away, due to differential gravitational pull, resulting in the rhythmic ebb and flow that has shaped coastal ecosystems, influenced human cultures, and guided navigation for millennia. These aren't just local phenomena, they are cosmic interactions playing out on our shorelines. Beyond our solar system, gravity is the fundamental force that shaped and continues to organize galaxies, those vast, magnificent collections of billions, even trillions of stars. It pulls stars together into intricate spiral arms, and it holds these immense structures together, preventing them from scattering chaotically across the universe. Our own Milky Way galaxy is a swirling disk of stars, gas, and dust, all held together by the collective gravitational pull of its constituent matter, centered around a supermassive black hole whose gravitational influence anchors the core. Without gravity, the universe as we know it, with its planets, stars, galaxies, and even the existence of exotic cosmic phenomena like black holes, whose very essence is extreme gravity, would simply not exist. It's the sculptor of the cosmos, tirelessly building structure out of primordial chaos, shaping the vast emptiness into the shimmering tapestries of nebulae and the grand architectures of galactic superclusters. It is the force that allows the universe to be something more than just a uniform, dilute soup of particles. This understanding, this deep appreciation for the invisible embrace of gravity, is crucial before we consider its temporary absence. We are so utterly, inextricably woven into its fabric that to imagine it gone, even for the briefest of moments, is to imagine the complete unraveling of everything we know. The very stability of our planet, the existence of our atmosphere, the flow of our oceans, the strength of our bodies, the integrity of our buildings, the predictability of our daily lives, all hinge on this one quiet, persistent force. And so we must ask the question that seems almost absurd in its impossibility. What if this constant, this bedrock of our reality, this silent architect of everything we know and experience, were to simply vanish? Not slowly, not subtly, but in an instant. What if, for just 5 seconds, the Earth lost its hold, the planets ceased their perfectly choreographed orbits, and the very curvature of space-time that defines our existence? Suddenly, what would become of everything that relies so absolutely on that constant, unseen pull? The answer is far more catastrophic, far more bizarre, and far more revealing about our place in the cosmos than you could possibly imagine. The clock is ticking. The clock is ticking. The world as we know it is tethered. Every object, every person, every drop of water, every molecule of air is in a constant, invisible embrace with the colossal mass of the Earth. We feel its pull every moment, even if we don't consciously register it. But what if, in an instant, that embrace was broken? What if, at the stroke of a universal clock, the very fabric of space-time that dictates gravity's presence suddenly, inexplicably, flattened out? The consequences would be immediate, disorienting, and utterly catastrophic. Imagine the universal moment of truth. Gravity gone. For a split second, a microsecond perhaps, there would be a collective, bewildered gasp. Your body, accustomed to the familiar downward pull, would suddenly feel weightless, not the gentle floating sensation of a swimming pool, nor the exhilarating freefall of a roller coaster, but a profound, unmooring absence. The muscles in your legs, accustomed to pushing against the ground, would find no resistance. Your internal organs, normally supported by your skeletal frame, would shift subtly within your body cavity. The effect would be instantaneous, akin to the bottom dropping out from beneath you, but without the subsequent impact. Instead, you'd find yourself rising. This isn't levitation by magic, it's the sudden realization of inertia and momentum. Every object on Earth, including you, is currently moving at incredible speeds as the planet spins on its axis. At the equator, this speed is roughly 1,670 kilometers per hour, about 1,037 miles per hour. Even here, further from the equator, you're still moving hundreds of kilometers per hour eastward. You don't feel this speed because everything around you, the air, the buildings, the ground, is moving with you, and gravity is keeping you firmly anchored. But the moment gravity vanishes, that anchoring force disappears. Your body, along with everything not physically bolted down, would attempt to continue its motion in a straight line at the last velocity it had. Since the Earth is rotating, and you are no longer pulled towards its center, your tangential velocity would immediately translate into an upward and eastward trajectory. Let's break down this bewildering first second. A cascade of impossible events unfolding at an unimaginable pace, the human experience. A symphony of disorientation. For every person on Earth, the initial sensation would be one of profound, immediate disequilibrium. Imagine standing or sitting. One moment, you're grounded. The next, you're no longer touching the surface. Your feet would lift from the floor. Your chair would no longer support you. If you were lying down, you might find yourself pressed against the ceiling. Or if your bed isn't secured, your entire bed might begin to lift with you on it. This isn't the gentle float of an astronaut in the International Space Station, where they've had time to adapt and are still technically falling around the Earth. This is a sudden jarring expulsion from stability. Your brain receiving conflicting signals from your eyes, seeing the room around you, and your vestibular system, which uses gravity to tell you which way is up, would be overwhelmed. Nausea, intense vertigo, and extreme disorientation would be instantaneous. People would flail, instinctively reaching for something solid that is no longer there, or no longer solid in the way they expect. If you were inside a building, the walls and ceiling would suddenly become your new floor, or rather, the surface you might inadvertently drift towards. People would collide with each other, with furniture, with walls, driven by their own initial momentum, or by others flailing. The air, though still present for this brief instant, would no longer have any weight, making breathing feel subtly different, perhaps too easy, or strangely light. Those who were standing might propel themselves upwards, with the slightest unintentional push from their feet, launching towards the ceiling with surprising force. Panic would erupt almost immediately. The human mind is hardwired for gravity. Our entire understanding of spatial relations is built upon it. The sudden removal of this fundamental constant would trigger primal fear. Screams would mingle with sounds of bumping and scraping as people and loose objects began their chaotic ascent. Objects in motion, the domestic and urban ascent. This isn't just about people. Everything not permanently anchored to the Earth's crust would begin its upward journey. Inside homes and offices, your phone, resting on the table, would quietly lift. The pen in your hand, if you dropped it, wouldn't fall. It would drift lazily upwards. Your keys, your wallet, your shoes, anything not secured would detach from surfaces. Books on shelves, dishes in cabinets, pictures on walls, if not securely fastened, all would begin to float. Liquids in open containers, like that glass of water you just poured, would not stay put. Surface tension might hold them together in trembling, quivering blobs for a moment. But any slight jostle, any breath of air, would send them detaching and reforming into smaller, free-floating spheres or irregular masses. Imagine your morning coffee turning into a dark, scalding orb drifting towards the ceiling. Dust motes, usually invisible against a sunbeam, would become starkly visible as they no longer settled, but began to slowly accumulate into swirling clouds of detritus. In urban environments, on the streets, parked cars would rumble as their tires lost contact with the asphalt, then gently, almost imperceptibly at first, begin to lift. Heavy trucks, buses, even trains, their immense weight suddenly rendered meaningless, would detach from their moorings. Pedestrians would float upwards from sidewalks. Those on bicycles would find their wheels spinning uselessly as they separated from the ground. The riders suddenly unseated and rising. Traffic lights, street signs, advertising hoardings, not built into sturdy structures, would begin to sway and then detach. Trees, while rooted, would experience immense upward pressure from their unanchored leaves, branches, and the soil around their roots. Loose leaves and twigs would be the first to go, drifting off into the sky like a reverse autumn. This initial ascent wouldn't be like a rocket launch. It would be a rather gentle, if terrifying, liftoff, because there's no air resistance pushing them back down. Not yet anyway, and no gravitational force pulling them. Objects would simply follow their last inertial path. Imagine a slow-motion film where every single loose item in a room just floats up. The heavier items would take slightly longer to visibly separate due to their greater inertia, but within this first second, even large objects would be verifiably airborne. The atmosphere's first sigh, winds of change. Perhaps one of the most immediate and profound effects, though not immediately obvious to most people, would be the start of the atmospheric reaction. Our atmosphere, a blanket of gases roughly 100 kilometers, 62 miles thick, is held down by Earth's gravity. It has weight, a colossal amount of it, pressing down on the Earth's surface with immense pressure. Without gravity, that pressure vanishes instantly. The atmosphere wouldn't just float away, it would immediately begin to expand outwards into the vacuum of space, like a highly compressed gas suddenly released into a void. This expansion would be incredibly rapid. Within fractions of a second, the pressure at lower altitudes where we live would plummet. This sudden drop in pressure would manifest as violent outward rushing winds. We're talking winds not just of hurricane force, but supersonic speeds. Imagine the sound, a deafening roar as air rushes violently outwards, tearing through urban landscapes. This would be combined with the vacuum effect. The air in your lungs, suddenly at a much higher pressure than the surrounding external air, would try to rush out, possibly causing severe damage to your lungs and eardrums. For anyone outdoors, this sudden atmospheric decompression would be like being caught in an explosive outward blast, not just a wind, but a rapid expansion of the very air they breathe. Buildings, designed to withstand lateral wind loads, would now be subjected to explosive internal pressures and suction from the rapidly escaping air, potentially leading to immediate structural compromise, even beyond the lifting effects. The ocean's first stir. Surface tension's last stand. The oceans, lakes and rivers' vast bodies of water would also immediately feel the loss of gravity. Water, like air, is a fluid, and its behavior is dictated by gravity. Without it, the immense pressure of the water column would vanish. The surface of oceans would no longer be flat, constrained by gravity. Instead, they would begin to bulge outwards, driven by any minuscule irregularities or subsurface currents. Surface tension, the force that holds water molecules together, is strong enough to create droplets and allow insects to walk on water, but it's utterly insignificant against the immense scale of an ocean. For a very brief moment, billions of tons of water would simply cease to be constrained. They would deform, begin to swell, and then, as the outward expansion of the atmosphere begins to affect them, the outermost layers of water would start to detach in colossal, free-floating sheets and colossal, trembling spheres, lifting into the now chaotic sky. These weren't small splashes. These were the beginnings of immense, uncontrolled water masses breaking free from the Earth's curvature. The sound of this would be beyond comprehension, a gargantuan sloshing, bubbling and roaring, as trillions of liters of water began their unceremonious separation from their beds. Coastal cities, if they hadn't already begun to lift or be torn apart by the atmospheric explosion, would witness the impossible, their harbors emptying, their vast ocean views replaced by massive, rising, churning water formations. A planet unmoored. The first structural groans. While we might not immediately perceive it, the Earth itself, a planet held together by its own immense gravity, would also feel the effects. Gravity isn't just an external force. It's what compresses the Earth's core, creates its internal heat, and drives its geological processes. The entire weight of the planet's outer layers, pressing inwards on the core, would suddenly vanish. For this first second, the Earth might just groan. The tremendous stresses and pressures within its crust, mantle, and core, normally balanced by gravity's compression, would be instantly removed. This could lead to instantaneous, violent seismic activity. Fault lines, normally locked by immense pressure, would suddenly be free to slip. The planet's very structure, held in a delicate balance of internal heat and external pressure, would be thrown into chaos. It might not visibly crack apart in the first second, but the internal pressures would begin to build, hinting at the geological cataclysm to come. Magma chambers would expand, tectonic plates would judder, and the entire planet would begin to experience internal decompression sickness on an unimaginable scale. The end of the first second, a new, terrifying reality. By the end of this single, fleeting second, the world would be unrecognizable to anyone still conscious enough to perceive it. The initial gentle lift would have accelerated significantly for many objects. People would be several meters, perhaps even dozens of meters, above their original positions, depending on their initial momentum and any forces they exerted. Loose objects would be a chaotic cloud of debris, swirling in the rapidly thinning, violently expanding atmosphere. The ground, now devoid of much of its loose covering, would be exposed, potentially fracturing as internal pressures changed. The sun and moon, for those still able to look, would appear unchanged for this brief moment, as their vast distances mean their gravitational influence on each other wouldn't immediately cease. Gravity travels at the speed of light, so it would take about 8 minutes for the sun's gravity to stop affecting Earth, and a little over a second for the moon's. But their relationship with Earth would already be broken. Earth would have begun its inexorable drift away from its orbital path, its cosmic tether severed. This wasn't a dream. This was the terrifying, immediate onset of a reality stripped bare of its most fundamental law. The world had become a colossal, uncontrollable projectile, and the true chaos, the unimaginable consequences of gravity's sudden departure, had only just begun. The first second was merely the opening act of an unprecedented cosmic nightmare. The stage was set for a world unmoored, its very existence redefined by the crushing absence of its invisible embrace. And the next 4 seconds would reveal just how fragile our grounded existence truly is. The initial gasp of disbelief, the first sensation of impossible weightlessness, that was just the beginning. The first second of gravity's absence unleashed a localized chaos, a bewildering separation of individuals and loose objects from the Earth's surface. But as the clock ticks into the second and then the third second, the effects amplify exponentially, moving beyond personal disorientation to a planet-wide unraveling. This is where inertia, the tendency of an object to resist changes in its state of motion, becomes a destructive force, where the Earth's own rotational speed transforms into a launching platform, and where the very elements of air and water begin their violent, uncontrolled exodus, the unstoppable ascent. From drifting to launching, remember how, at the end of the first second, you and various objects were just meters above your original positions, perhaps drifting upwards with a bewildering slowness. That relative tranquility is now shattered. As the second begins, the upward movement intensifies dramatically. This isn't because a new force is pushing things. It's because the only force that was pulling them down is gone, and the tangential velocity of the Earth's rotation is now unimpeded. Think of it like this. You're standing on a massive merry-go-round that's spinning rapidly. As long as you hold on, you move with it. If you suddenly let go, you don't just stop. You fly off in a straight line tangential to the edge of the merry-go-round at the point you released. The Earth is that merry-go-round, spinning at hundreds of kilometers per hour. When gravity vanishes, you effectively let go. So within the second and third seconds, your initial upward drift rapidly transforms into a propelled ascent. You're not just floating, you're being launched. In mid-latitudes, this tangential velocity might be around 1,000 kilometers per hour, 620 mil/h, to the east. Without gravity pulling you back down or providing friction, that horizontal speed starts to translate into an increasingly steep upward trajectory. By the end of the third second, people and objects would not merely be floating a few meters off the ground. They would be soaring hundreds, perhaps even thousands of meters into the rapidly thinning air, moving at staggering horizontal speeds to the east. Imagine the view for those still conscious, the ground below receding with terrifying speed, not straight down, but off to the west as you hurtle upwards and eastward. It would be a disorienting, gut-wrenching experience, far beyond anything an amusement park ride could simulate. This accelerated ascent wouldn't be gentle. The sudden increase in your vertical velocity, combined with your eastward horizontal movement, would create a sensation of being violently thrown. People would be flung against any surfaces they happened to touch, or against each other, before rocketing free into the open air. This is the moment when objects that were merely lifting in the first second become dangerous projectiles. Terrestrial disarray. The world comes undone. As objects accelerate upwards, the sheer scale of the terrestrial unraveling becomes horrifyingly apparent. Vehicles, cars, which gently lifted in the first second, are now hurtling eastward and upwards. They'd bounce off each other, off buildings, off any remaining structures, becoming multi-ton projectiles. Buses, trucks, even entire trains would detach from their rails, their immense masses now liabilities rather than sources of stability. Imagine seeing a train, hundreds of tons of steel, slowly lifting, then gaining speed as it arcs eastward, tumbling end over end as it rises. Fuel lines would rupture, batteries would detach, leading to explosions as highly flammable liquids and gases are exposed to sparks and air. Infrastructure, buildings, while designed to be heavy and anchored, are not immune. Their foundations rely on the immense weight of the structure pressing down. Without this weight, the forces holding them to the ground fundamentally change. Roads, bridges, and power lines, designed for specific gravitational loads and stresses, would begin to fracture. Roads would buckle and crack, not from settling, but from the sudden lack of downward pressure, allowing the earth beneath them to expand or shift. Sections of bridges, no longer under compression, might spring upwards or simply unravel. Power lines, no longer sagging under their own weight, would snap taut, then break, whipping wildly and sparking as they disconnected from their poles, cascading power outages and fires. Foliage and earth. Trees previously held fast by their roots would begin to feel immense strain. While the trunks might hold, branches and vast swathes of leaves would detach, forming immense airborne forests of debris. Topsoil, no longer compressed by gravity, would become loose and begin to lift, creating vast continental-scale dust clouds that would obscure the ground below. Loose rocks, pebbles, sand, anything not solidified into bedrock would join the rising tide of detritus, adding to the lethal shower that would inevitably follow. The very landscape would deform, with hills and mountains potentially expanding or subtly shifting as the compressive forces that hold them together are relieved. The atmosphere's fury, winds of annihilation and the vacuum's embrace, while the physical objects launch, the atmosphere's response would escalate into a cataclysm of unimaginable proportions. The initial rush of expanding air from the first second would now be a full-blown supersonic outward blast. Consider this. At Earth's surface, atmospheric pressure is roughly 14.7 pounds per square inch, or 101.3 kilopascals. This pressure is due to the weight of the air column above us, held down by gravity. When gravity vanishes, that weight goes to zero. The air, under immense internal pressure compared to the vacuum of space, would try to escape into the void as quickly as possible. This isn't just wind, it's a rapid decompression event on a planetary scale. Within seconds, 2 and 3, hypersonic winds. The air would be rushing outwards at speeds far exceeding the speed of sound, creating immense shockwaves that would pulverize everything in their path. Imagine winds not just tearing leaves from trees, but ripping trees from their roots, peeling the skin off buildings, and instantly shredding any human or animal caught outdoors. This isn't wind as we know it, it's an explosive outward rushing tsunami of air. Rapid vacuum formation. As air rushes away, the atmospheric pressure at ground level would plummet to near vacuum conditions within these few seconds. For anyone caught outdoors, this would be instant death. The sudden extreme pressure differential would cause internal organs to rupture, eardrums to burst, and fluids to boil, a phenomenon called ebullism. Blood, saliva, and the water in your eyes would literally begin to bubble and vaporize. Global refrigeration. As gases expand rapidly, they cool dramatically. The escaping atmosphere would cause an immediate and precipitous drop in global temperatures. Surfaces exposed to this rapidly thinning and cooling air would experience instant flash freezing, even as other processes generate heat. Sound and silence. The initial deafening roar of the escaping air would quickly be followed by an eerie, profound silence, as the atmosphere thinned to the point where sound waves could no longer propagate. A vacuum cannot transmit sound, so the screams of the dying, the roar of collapsing buildings, the grinding of metal would fade into an impossible quiet. The skies would darken not just from flying debris and dust, but from the rapid loss of atmospheric scattering. The familiar blue would vanish, replaced by the inky blackness of space, even in broad daylight, as the density of the air decreased to near nothingness. Light from the sun would still reach the surface, but it would appear harsh and unfiltered, creating stark contrasts with no soft diffusion. Water's rebellion, oceanic cataclysm. While the atmosphere explodes outwards, the oceans, now completely unburdened by gravity, would begin their truly terrifying rebellion. The initial bulging seen in the first second would now escalate into a monumental, uncontrolled expansion. Water molecules, while held together by surface tension on a small scale, have no overarching force to keep them in their basins without gravity. The entire volume of the Earth's oceans, lakes and rivers would begin to lift into space, gigantic water spheres and sheets. Instead of a flat surface, the oceans would transform into immense, chaotic, and unimaginably vast globules and sheets of water, expanding outwards from the Earth's surface. Picture a liquid planet trying to shake off its skin. These weren't small waves. These were hundreds of cubic kilometers of water, detaching in a single gargantuan liquid mass. The internal pressure of the water, which normally balances the external pressure of gravity, would also play a role, contributing to this outward expansion. Steam and ice. As the water masses rise into the near vacuum and experience the extreme cold of the rapidly expanding atmosphere, parts of them would instantly vaporize into steam, especially the surface layers that are still relatively warm, while other parts would flash freeze into colossal chunks of ice. So the sky would not only be filled with massive water blobs, but also swirling clouds of supercooled vapor and titanic ice shards. Devastation of coastlines. Coastal cities, already ravaged by the atmospheric decompression, would now be exposed to the immediate and complete draining of their surrounding waters. Harbors would become barren mudflats in seconds, only to be obliterated by the expanding water masses or the returning debris. The sheer volume of water lifting would expose vast swathes of continental shelf and ocean floor, momentarily revealing geological features normally hidden for eons, before they too were blasted by the escaping atmosphere. The Earth itself, deep tremors and surface expansion. While human consciousness would be focused on the immediate, terrifying chaos of rising objects and vanishing air, the Earth itself would be undergoing a profound internal transformation. Crustal expansion. The Earth's crust is normally under immense compressive stress due to the weight of everything above it and the pull of gravity towards the core. When this compression vanishes, the crust would experience a sudden and violent decompression. Imagine a giant spring that has been held tightly compressed for billions of years, suddenly released. This wouldn't be a gentle expansion. It would be a rapid, forceful rebound. Massive earthquakes. This sudden decompression would trigger earthquakes of unimaginable magnitude across the entire planet. Fault lines that have been locked for millennia would slip violently. The entire tectonic plate system, normally moving ponderously under immense gravitational and internal forces, would experience chaotic, instantaneous shifts. Cities built on fault lines would be obliterated, not just by shaking, but by the ground beneath them literally expanding and tearing apart. Volcanic eruptions. The internal pressure in magma chambers, previously contained by the weight of the rock above, would suddenly increase relative to the external pressure. This would lead to widespread explosive volcanic eruptions. Dormant volcanoes would awaken, and new fissures might tear open, spewing magma and ash into the now chaotic atmosphere, adding another layer of destruction. Mountain growth. Mountain ranges, formed by the slow collision of tectonic plates under immense gravitational pressure, might experience rapid, albeit temporary, upward expansion as the compressive forces are released. They might literally grow taller by meters in these few seconds, before their structural integrity, dependent on the previous balance, completely fails. Life's final moments. The pervasive onslaught. For almost all life on Earth, these 2 seconds would bring about their inevitable end. Oxygen deprivation. The primary cause of death for most living beings would be rapid asphyxiation, due to the instantaneous loss of breathable atmosphere. Even if one were miraculously shielded from the winds and impacts, the air would be gone. Extreme cold and ebulism, exposure to near vacuum and cryogenic temperatures, would cause almost immediate cellular damage. The boiling of bodily fluids would be a gruesome and swift end. Impact trauma. For those outdoors or in less secure structures, the sheer force of the escaping atmosphere, followed by collisions with rapidly accelerating debris, including other people, vehicles, and parts of buildings, would be unsurvivable. Imagine being hit by a car while simultaneously experiencing a vacuum and being flash frozen. Internal organ failure. The sudden shift of internal organs, the rapid decompression of gases within the body, and the cessation of normal cardiovascular function would compound the lethality. By the close of the 3rd second, the Earth would be a scene of unimaginable devastation. What was once a vibrant blue and green planet, teeming with life, would be transforming into a swirling maelstrom of debris, expanding atmospheric gases, and colossal free-floating water masses, all moving at incredible speeds into the void. The ground itself would be racked by unprecedented geological upheaval. The very concept of ground would be losing its meaning as the planet shed its layers. The initial bewildered surprise would have given way to a terrifying, absolute understanding of impending doom for any sentient being still clinging to existence. There would be no escape, no shelter, no possible way to mitigate the forces at play. The invisible embrace of gravity, now absent for a mere 3 seconds, had unleashed a planetary apocalypse, a silent scream of a world unmade. And the worst was yet to come, as the accelerating objects began to reach truly orbital velocities, moving further and further away from their home, The stage was not just set, it was dissolving. It was dissolving. The initial bewilderment, the surge of panic, the gut-wrenching sensation of being ripped from stability. Those fleeting moments defined the first 3 seconds of gravity's absence. In those initial moments, the Earth began to shed its skin, its atmosphere exploding outwards, its oceans rising in monstrous, unconstrained globules, and every unanchored object launching skyward. But as the clock ticks into seconds 4 and 5, the scale of the cataclysm expands beyond local devastation. This is the stage where the Earth itself begins to truly unravel, where the very forces of inertia reach their terrifying apex, and where the planet starts its inexorable drift into the cold, silent void, leaving behind a wake of unimaginable destruction. The apex of absurdity, reaching terminal ascent. By the start of the 4th second, the upward motion of objects, including people, has ceased to be a gentle float or even a sharp launch. Due to the Earth's rotation, the tangential velocity of objects on the surface is significant. When gravity vanished, this horizontal velocity, previously curving with the Earth, now translates into a straight-line trajectory. For objects at the equator, this is over 1,600 kilometers per hour. For objects at other latitudes, it's still hundreds of kilometers per hour. Without gravity to curve their path back towards the Earth's center, everything launched skyward is now following a ballistic trajectory, rocketing upwards and eastwards at immense speeds. Consider the sheer scale. By the end of the 3rd second, many objects would be hundreds or even thousands of meters in the air. As the 4th and 5th seconds unfold, these objects are now accelerating towards suborbital and even orbital velocities. The lighter objects, those with less air resistance, what little air remains, would be accelerating faster, potentially reaching even higher altitudes. Heavier objects would follow, their inertia carrying them upward with incredible momentum. Imagine looking down. Cities that were moments ago recognizable now appear as swirling, chaotic masses of rising debris. Buildings are not just shedding their outer layers, their very structural integrity, compromised by the sudden lack of downward compression and the internal pressures, is failing spectacularly. Concrete shatters, steel girders twist and tear. What were skyscrapers are now columns of debris erupting skyward. Cars, trains, entire sections of roads are hurtling away from the Earth's surface, tumbling end over end, becoming a cloud of deadly, rapidly dispersing shrapnel. For any human caught in this maelstrom, the experience would be one of absolute terror, a sickeningly rapid ascent into a hostile, airless environment, punctuated by collisions with other rising debris. Even if one somehow avoided impact, the lack of breathable air and the extreme cold would render survival impossible. The very concept of ground level would be lost to a churning, expanding cloud of earthly detritus into the stratosphere and beyond. The atmosphere's vanishing act. The explosive atmospheric decompression, which began in the first seconds, would now be nearing its terrifying completion. By seconds 4 and 5, the lower atmosphere, the troposphere, and much of the stratosphere would be largely gone. Near vacuum conditions. At what was once ground level, the pressure would have plummeted to near vacuum, perhaps 1,000th or 1,000,000th of its original value. For any life that miraculously survived the initial impacts or explosions, this would be the final, inescapable end. Lungs would collapse, and fluids would boil away instantly. The black sky, the familiar blue sky, would have completely vanished, with almost no air left to scatter sunlight. The sun would appear as an incredibly harsh, brilliant disk against an inky black sky. Even in what was once broad daylight, stars would be visible, unblinking points of light, even during the day. The transition from day to night would be less about Earth's rotation and more about whether you're facing the sun or spinning away from it in the chaos. Cryogenic temperatures. The rapid expansion and escape of the atmosphere would lead to a dramatic and instantaneous drop in temperature. Exposed surfaces would flash freeze. Water would sublimate directly from ice to vapor. This extreme cold, combined with the vacuum, would turn any exposed organic matter into a frozen, brittle husk. Upper atmosphere detachment. What remains of the upper atmosphere, the mesosphere and thermosphere, would also be expanding outwards. Lighter gas molecules would be reaching escape velocity, permanently abandoning Earth. This would effectively strip Earth bare of its protective gaseous shield, leaving its surface utterly exposed to unfiltered solar radiation and cosmic rays. The Earth would begin to look less like a living planet and more like a barren, airless rock, its once vibrant blue marble transforming into a dusty grey-brown sphere, shrouded in a rapidly expanding halo of debris and escaping gases. Water's cataclysm, the global hydrological apocalypse. The oceans, lakes and rivers, which began to bulge and lift in seconds 1 through 3, would now be in full, catastrophic motion. The internal pressure of the water and the lack of external gravitational constraint would drive their expansion. Massive water blobs and sheets. Trillions of tons of water would have detached from the Earth's surface, forming gargantuan, continent-sized blobs and expansive, undulating sheets. These immense liquid masses, no longer cohesive, would be breaking apart into smaller, equally massive but still unmanageable spheres and irregular shapes, all drifting outwards. They would be colliding with each other, merging and then tearing apart again due to differential velocities, a ring of ice and vapor. As these water masses ascend into the near vacuum and extreme cold of the rapidly vanishing atmosphere, a significant portion of them would flash freeze into colossal chunks of ice. Other parts, particularly those near the surface of the blobs, would rapidly vaporize into supercooled steam. The result would be a vast, chaotic, and rapidly expanding ring of water, ice, and vapor forming around the Earth, a temporary, chaotic halo of what were once our life-giving oceans. This ring would be vast, stretching potentially thousands of kilometers into space. Exposed ocean floors. The complete removal of the Earth's oceans would expose the vast, hidden landscapes of the ocean floors. Deep trenches, underwater mountain ranges, and expansive plains, normally under crushing pressure, would be revealed. However, this revelation would be fleeting, as these newly exposed surfaces would immediately be subjected to the explosive decompression of the Earth's crust and the ongoing atmospheric escape. They would also be bombarded by any remaining debris falling or bouncing around. The Earth itself, planetary disintegration and reshaping. While the atmosphere and oceans detach, the solid Earth undergoes its most profound transformation. The planet, held together by its own immense gravity, would now be under extraordinary and conflicting forces. Global faulting and fracturing. The sudden release of immense compressive stress from billions of years of gravity pressing inwards would cause the Earth's crust to rebound violently. This wouldn't be localized earthquakes, but a continuous planet-wide fracturing. Fissures would open across continents, tearing apart land masses. The rigid tectonic plates, no longer held tightly against each other, would violently tear apart or lurch, causing global continuous seismic activity of magnitudes never before conceived. Mountain ranges, formed by the slow grinding collision of plates, would suddenly expand outwards, potentially crumbling as their internal compressive integrity vanished. Volcanic eruptions on a global scale. The sudden reduction in pressure on the Earth's mantle and core would trigger an unprecedented surge of magma to the surface. Volcanoes across the entire globe, even those long dormant, would erupt explosively, spewing vast quantities of ash, rock, and superheated gases into the escaping atmosphere. New volcanic vents would tear open in unexpected places, as the planet's internal pressure found countless pathways to release. This would add an immense amount of incandescent material to the rising debris cloud. Melted surface. In areas of intense volcanic activity, the Earth's surface would begin to melt. Combined with the rapid loss of atmospheric pressure, large areas of the planet's surface would transform into a hellish landscape of exposed, bubbling magma and fracturing rock. Core and mantle expansion. Even the deep core and mantle of the Earth, normally under unimaginable pressure, would begin to experience minute but significant expansion. This internal unrest would contribute to the global seismic and volcanic chaos. The magnetic field, generated by the convection currents in the liquid outer core, might become unstable or even begin to dissipate as the forces governing its generation are fundamentally altered. Life's extinction, the universal death sentence. By seconds 4 and 5, any remaining life, from the smallest microbe to the largest whale, would have ceased to exist. Absolute vacuum and cold. The near-perfect vacuum and cryogenic temperatures at the Earth's surface would render any form of metabolism or biological function impossible. Every living cell would be instantly flash frozen and subjected to ebullition, radiation exposure. With the atmosphere gone, Earth's surface would be bathed in unfiltered solar ultraviolet radiation, X-rays, and cosmic rays. These highly energetic particles would destroy any remaining molecular structures, mechanical destruction. Even if the other conditions weren't lethal, the sheer mechanical forces would be the planet-wide earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, collisions with debris, and the explosive expansion of land and water would simply obliterate everything. Nothing could withstand such forces. The Earth's cosmic departure, a planet adrift. While all this internal and atmospheric chaos unfolds, the Earth itself, now unburdened by the Sun's gravity, begins its independent journey into the cosmos. Drifting from orbit. For billions of years, Earth has maintained a delicate balance of gravitational pull from the Sun and its own orbital velocity, keeping it in a stable path. The moment the Sun's gravity, traveling at the speed of light, ceases to affect Earth, the Earth would immediately begin to drift away from its orbital path in a straight line, tangential to its orbit at that precise moment. In these fleeting seconds, the deviation would be minor in astronomical terms, perhaps only a few tens of kilometers from its usual orbital path, but it would be an irreversible deviation. The Earth would have become a rogue planet. The Moon's fate. The Moon, currently held in orbit by Earth's gravity, would also begin to drift away from Earth in a straight line, tangential to its orbit. Its departure would be more immediate and noticeable from Earth's perspective than Earth's departure from the Sun, simply due to the closer proximity. The once familiar Moon would appear to slowly drift away, its size diminishing against the now black sky, a global graveyard. From an external perspective, the Earth, in these seconds, would transform into a chaotic, expanding cloud of debris. What was once a vibrant living world would now be a dying planet, shedding its outer layers into space, leaving behind a scarred, barren, and expanding core. The silence of space would have descended upon its surface, punctuated only by the unimaginable sounds of rock fracturing and magma erupting into the vacuum. By the close of the 5th second, the Earth would be a scene of utter, irreversible devastation. No life could possibly remain. The planet would be an expanding sphere of rapidly moving detritus, its atmosphere gone, its oceans vaporizing and freezing into colossal ice shards, its crust tearing itself apart. Its gravitational tether to the Sun would be broken, sending it on a new, lonely trajectory through the cosmos. The world, as we knew it, would be fundamentally, irrevocably, and spectacularly unmade. This was the moment of peak chaos, the climax of an impossible disaster. The stage was not just dissolving, it had become a cosmic debris field, accelerating towards an uncertain and terrifying fate. The previous chapters traced an unimaginable catastrophe, a nightmare unfolding in mere seconds. We witnessed the comfortable familiarity of our world shatter as gravity vanished for a terrifying 5-second interlude. We saw the atmosphere explode outwards, the oceans writhe and escape, and every object, from the smallest pebble to the largest skyscraper, hurtle skyward before plummeting back with the force of 1,000 megaton bombs. The Earth itself convulsed, its crust fracturing, its interior rebelling against the sudden release and reimposition of immense pressures. By the end of the 5th second, and in the immediate, violent aftermath of gravity's return, the blue marble we knew was no more. Life, in all its myriad forms, had been utterly extinguished, replaced by a landscape of unmitigated desolation and silence. Now, as the echoes of that planetary cataclysm fade, we are left to survey the grim, enduring reality of a world fundamentally, irrevocably transformed. This final chapter is not about what would happen in those 5 seconds, but what would be left in the long, silent eons that followed. It is a contemplation of the ultimate aftermath, the philosophical weight of such a loss, and the profound, humbling lessons we, as a species, had we survived to learn them, might glean about the universe's delicate balance and the silent, indispensable power of the force we so readily took for granted. The post-apocalyptic landscape, a world unrecognizable. Picture the Earth now. The churning chaos of the 5 seconds has subsided. The colossal impacts are over. The supersonic winds have abated, and the planet has settled into a new, terrifying equilibrium. What remains is a world utterly alien, a monument to the violence of its recent past, a pockmarked, scoured surface. The familiar geography of continents and oceans would be obliterated. Where once stood vast plains and bustling cities, there would now be immense new impact craters, some kilometers wide and hundreds of meters deep, carved by the colossal falling debris and water masses. These craters would be filled with shattered rock, pulverized concrete, and the remnants of what were once buildings. Coastal regions, once vibrant with life, would be scoured clean, flattened by the unimaginable force of falling tsunamis. The land would stretch inland for hundreds of kilometers, resembling a vast, desolate mudflat or a newly exposed, barren seabed. The previous chapters traced an unimaginable catastrophe, a nightmare unfolding in mere seconds. We witnessed the comfortable familiarity of our world shatter as gravity vanished for a terrifying 5-second interlude. We saw the atmosphere explode outwards, the oceans writhe and escape, and every object, from the smallest pebble to the largest skyscraper, hurtle skyward before plummeting back with the force of 1,000 megaton bombs. The Earth itself convulsed, its crust fracturing, its interior rebelling against the sudden release and reimposition of immense pressures. By the end of the 5th second, and in the immediate, violent aftermath of gravity's return, the blue marble we knew was no more. Life, in all its myriad forms, had been utterly extinguished, replaced by a landscape of unmitigated desolation and silence. Now, as the echoes of that planetary cataclysm fade, we are left to survey the grim, enduring reality of a world fundamentally, irrevocably transformed. This final chapter is not about what would happen in those 5 seconds, but what would be left in the long, silent eons that followed. It is a contemplation of the ultimate aftermath, the philosophical weight of such a loss, and the profound, humbling lessons we, as a species, had we survived to learn them, might glean about the universe's delicate balance and the silent, indispensable power of the force we so readily took for granted. The post-apocalyptic landscape, a world unrecognizable. Picture the Earth now. The churning chaos of the 5 seconds has subsided. The colossal impacts are over. The supersonic winds have abated, and the planet has settled into a new, terrifying equilibrium. What remains is a world utterly alien, a monument to the violence of its recent past, a pockmarked, scoured surface. The familiar geography of continents and oceans would be obliterated. Where once stood vast plains and bustling cities, there would now be immense new impact craters, some kilometers wide and hundreds of meters deep, carved by the colossal falling debris and water masses. These craters would be filled with shattered rock, pulverized concrete, and the remnants of what were once buildings. Coastal regions, once vibrant with life, would be scoured clean, flattened by the unimaginable force of falling tsunamis. The land would stretch inland for hundreds of kilometers, resembling a vast, desolate mudflat or a newly exposed, barren seabed. Mountain ranges, having violently expanded and then recompressed, would be fractured and eroded, their peaks perhaps lower, their valleys wider, their slopes scarred by landslides and the descent of their own fragmented rock. The very color of the land would be different. Vast areas would be covered in thick layers of ash from global volcanic eruptions, or a fine dust of pulverized rock and concrete. The green of vegetation, the vibrant hues of civilization, would be gone, replaced by monochrome grays, browns, and blacks. New hydrological features. The distribution of water would be radically altered. While some water would have escaped into space, and much would have boiled and frozen, the majority would have been pulled back to Earth. However, it wouldn't settle back into its original basins. Immense new inland seas and lakes would form in the largest impact craters, creating vast, deep, circular bodies of water on what was once dry land. The former ocean basins, now deeply scoured and reshaped, might hold different volumes of water, or in some places, could be permanently exposed as new, barren land masses. The previous intricate network of rivers would be obliterated, their paths scoured or filled by debris. Any new rivers would flow along newly formed contours. The composition of this water would be toxic, heated by the impacts, mixed with ash, pulverized rock, and the chemical remnants of shattered civilization. These waters would be an acidic, superheated, sterile soup, completely devoid of life. Over geological timescales, these might slowly become habitable again, but not in any meaningful human timeframe. A barren atmosphere. The atmosphere would eventually reform from the gases pulled back to Earth, but it would be a thin, toxic, and utterly unbreathable mixture. Massive amounts of dust and ash from impacts and volcanoes would linger in the upper atmosphere, blocking sunlight for decades or centuries, plunging the planet into a deep, prolonged impact winter. The initial heating from atmospheric re-entry would give way to extreme cold as the dust blocked the sun. This would be followed by potentially runaway greenhouse effects if enough greenhouse gases were released from the Earth's interior during the geological upheavals. The climate would be wildly unstable, oscillating between extremes of cold and heat. The ozone layer, vital for shielding Earth from harmful UV radiation, would be completely destroyed by the atmospheric expansion and recompression. The surface would be bathed in lethal levels of UV radiation for millennia, making the slow recovery of even simple life forms extraordinarily difficult. Geological instability. Even after the immediate cataclysm, the Earth's interior would take eons to return to a stable state. The stresses from the sudden decompression and recompression would continue to manifest as frequent, powerful earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, far more common and violent than before. The planet would continue to ring and adjust for hundreds of thousands of years. Plate tectonics would be dramatically altered. The subduction zones, mid-ocean ridges, and fault lines that define our current geological activity would be fundamentally reshaped, leading to new, unpredictable patterns of seismic and volcanic activity. The concept of safe land would be meaningless. The absence of life, a silent planet, the most profound and heartbreaking aspect of this scarred new world would be its absolute chilling silence. Universal extinction. There would be no survivors. Not a single blade of grass, not a deep-sea microbe, not a bacterium buried in ancient ice. The combination of vacuum, extreme cold, intense radiation, crushing impacts, supersonic winds, massive tsunamis, and planet-wide geological upheaval would have ensured total sterilization. The entire intricate web of life that took billions of years to evolve would be unmade in 5 seconds. The end of all ecosystems. Forests, oceans teeming with fish, vibrant coral reefs, the bustling diversity of rainforests, the vast herds of the savannas, all gone. The complex, interdependent systems that regulate Earth's climate and support life would be utterly annihilated. The carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the water cycle, all would be violently disrupted, their functions grinding to a halt. A barren biosphere. The Earth would remain biologically barren for an immense stretch of time. The conditions, harsh radiation, unstable atmosphere, toxic water, and continuous geological turmoil, would make the re-emergence of life incredibly challenging, if not impossible, for tens or hundreds of millions of years. Even if a single-celled organism could eventually re-evolve, the journey back to complex, multicellular life would require another several billion years, an incomprehensibly vast span of time. The cosmic drift, Earth's new destiny. Beyond its immediate surface, Earth's place in the cosmos would be forever changed. Altered orbit. While gravity's return would re-establish Earth's gravitational link to the Sun, its trajectory would be profoundly altered. The 5 seconds of tangential drift would have sent it off its billions of years old orbital path. It would likely settle into a new, highly eccentric orbit, perhaps elongated, bringing it dangerously close to the Sun at one point, and then swinging it far out into the frozen reaches of the outer solar system at another. Such an orbit would preclude any long-term climate stability necessary for life, even if life could somehow re-emerge. The Moon's fate would be uncertain. Having drifted away from Earth, it might not be immediately recaptured into a stable orbit. It could become a rogue moon, slowly drifting into interstellar space, or it might be recaptured into a new, highly unstable orbit around Earth, leading to future collisions or its eventual expulsion. The familiar lunar phases, the ebb and flow of tides, gone forever in their current form. A warning from afar. For any distant civilization with advanced telescopic capabilities, the Earth would suddenly appear as a catastrophic event, a temporary flare of light as the atmosphere re-entered and impacts occurred, followed by a dramatic change in its spectral signature, indicating the loss of water, atmosphere, and signs of life. Earth would become a chilling cosmic object lesson, a reminder of the fragility of planetary habitability. Lessons learned. The indispensable force. Had humanity survived such an event, the lessons would be etched into its collective consciousness with unimaginable permanence. This hypothetical catastrophe would serve as the ultimate, most devastating demonstration of gravity's profound and indispensable role. The architect of order. We would understand, with bone-chilling clarity, that gravity is not merely a force, it is the fundamental architect of order in the universe. It creates planets, holds them together, gives them atmospheres and oceans, and keeps them in stable orbits around stars. It is the silent hand that allows complex, intricate systems, like life itself, to arise and flourish. Without it, everything unravels into chaos and dispersion. The fragility of existence. The 5 seconds would highlight the terrifying fragility of our existence. Our planet, our bodies, our civilization, all are built on an incredibly delicate balance of fundamental forces. We exist within a cosmic sweet spot, a narrow window of conditions that allow life. Remove one seemingly constant factor, and the entire edifice collapses. It's a humbling realization that our complex societies and technological advancements are utterly meaningless without the basic physical laws remaining constant. The power of the unseen. Gravity's invisibility makes it easy to ignore. This thought experiment forces us to confront the profound power of forces we cannot see, touch, or even directly feel, yet which define every moment of our lives. It reminds us that the most fundamental truths are often hidden in plain sight, woven into the very fabric of reality. A renewed appreciation for a species that constantly strives to overcome limitations. Gravity often appears as an obstacle, something to fight against with rockets and cranes. But in its absence, we would understand it as the ultimate enabler. It is the force that allows us to stand, to breathe, to build, to flow, to live. Its constancy is not a limitation, but a blessing of unimaginable proportions. The universe's indifference. This scenario also underscores the universe's profound indifference to life. The cosmos operates by its own laws, and while they permit life to arise in certain pockets, they can just as easily and just as dispassionately unmake it if a fundamental parameter is altered, even for the briefest of moments. The universe does not care whether humanity exists or not. It simply is. The Earth, now a silent, scarred relic, would continue its altered journey around the Sun, a barren rock devoid of the vibrant hum of life. Its surface would eventually weather and reshape over millennia, the craters softening, the new water bodies finding a more stable equilibrium. But the memory, if there were any to remember, would be clear. 5 seconds was all it took. 5 seconds for the invisible embrace to vanish, and in its absence, the entire symphony of life, meticulously composed over billions of years, to fall silent forever. It is a chilling thought, a profound reminder of the silent, relentless work of the force that holds our world, and indeed our very selves, together. And in that silence, we would finally understand the true, immeasurable value of gravity, the unseen anchor of our existence. The previous chapters painted a chilling picture of a world unmade. In 5 fleeting seconds, Earth's invisible embrace vanished, unleashing a cascade of unimaginable horrors. Our atmosphere exploded outwards, our oceans transformed into colossal, chaotic blobs of water and ice, and every unanchored object, from dust motes to entire buildings, rocketed skyward at terrifying speeds, hurtling tens, hundreds, even thousands of meters into the rapidly thinning air. The planet itself groaned, its crust fracturing, its volcanoes erupting, as the immense internal pressures, once balanced by gravity, found violent release. Life, as we know it, would have been extinguished. The Earth was no longer a vibrant blue marble, but a swirling, expanding cloud of debris, a cosmic piñata bursting outwards, silently, into the inky blackness of space. But then, as abruptly and inexplicably as it vanished, the unthinkable happens. The universal clock strikes again, and at the precise microsecond of the 6th second, the fabric of space-time snaps back into its familiar, curved configuration. Gravity returns. The return would not be a gentle re-anchoring. It would be an immediate, absolute, and unimaginably violent reimposition of force. Everything that had been launched skyward, every piece of debris, every droplet of water, every atom of what was once our atmosphere, and every living creature, if by some cosmic impossibility one had survived, would instantaneously be subjected to the full crushing force of Earth's gravitational pull. This isn't a gentle descent. This is a planetary-scale impact event, happening everywhere, all at once. Everything that went up must now come down, and it will come down with the full, unbridled fury of its accumulated velocity. The rain of debris, a global barrage. Imagine the sky. Moments ago it was black, perhaps streaked with massive ice-encrusted water blobs and streaks of atmospheric vapor. Now it is filled with an infinite, terrifying density of falling objects. This isn't just rain, it's a reverse explosion, a universal bombardment. Human and animal fallout. Any individuals or animals that were launched skyward, even if they somehow survived the vacuum, cold, and radiation, would now become high-velocity projectiles. Even those who only went up a few hundred meters would be falling back at terminal velocity, speeds approaching 200 kilometers per hour, 120 mph. From higher altitudes, where air resistance would be less of a factor, their descent would be even faster. Impact with the ground or any surface would be instantaneous and utterly unsurvivable, obliterating all organic matter. It would be a grotesque, global hail of what were once living beings. Vehicles and infrastructure, cars, trucks, buses, train carriages, aircraft, pieces of buildings, everything that detached and ascended would now plummet. A falling car, for instance, could easily weigh over 1,500 kilograms, 3,300 pounds. Dropping from hundreds or thousands of meters, these would hit the ground with the force of small bombs. Roads would be cratered, intact structures pulverized, and the very ground would be churned and scarred by endless, deafening impacts. Imagine the sound, a continuous, deafening roar, a symphony of destruction as millions of tons of man-made materials slam back into the planet. The atmospheric rebound. The atmosphere, which had exploded outwards into space, would now be violently pulled back to Earth by the restored gravity. This wouldn't be a gentle resettling. It would be a colossal, implosive shockwave. Air molecules rushing back at supersonic speeds would collide with each other and with the descending debris, generating immense heat and pressure. The sky would glow with the frictional heating of the re-entering atmosphere. This implosion would create powerful, inward-rushing winds, the reverse of the vacuum winds, capable of flattening any remaining structures that miraculously survived the initial ascent and subsequent impacts. The sound, if anything were left to hear it, would be a crushing, unimaginable roar, the sound of an entire planetary envelope slamming back into its home. This compression would also lead to an immediate, dramatic spike in global temperatures, a momentary furnace before the cold of space truly set in. Water's revenge, tsunamis of annihilation. Perhaps the most visually spectacular and utterly devastating aspect of gravity's return would be the fate of the oceans. The titanic, free-floating blobs and sheets of water, some potentially spanning hundreds of kilometers, would now be dragged back towards the Earth with unimaginable force. global tsunamis. These colossal water masses, falling from thousands of meters, would strike the Earth's surface with the force of multi-megaton bombs. Imagine a solid wall of water, kilometers high, slamming into continents at supersonic speeds. The impact would generate tsunamis on a scale that defies comprehension. Not just localized waves, but planetary-scale liquid hammer blows. These would utterly obliterate any coastal regions, then surge inland for hundreds, if not thousands of kilometers, scouring the land clear of any remaining structures or geological features. Mountains would be submerged, valleys carved anew, and entire landmasses fundamentally reshaped by these liquid hammer blows. Crater lakes and boiling seas. Where these gargantuan water masses impacted, they would excavate immense craters, instantly filling them to form new temporary lakes. The sheer energy of the impact would also generate immense heat, causing vast stretches of the newly returned oceans to boil violently, creating colossal plumes of steam that would briefly shroud the scarred planet. This steam in turn would then be pulled back down, contributing to the atmospheric chaos. Internal ocean impacts. Even the water that had remained closer to the Earth's surface, forming smaller, unconstrained pools, would crash back down with immense force, churning the seabed, reshaping topography, and creating localized, but still catastrophic deluges. Geological aftermath. A world torn asunder. The Earth itself, having expanded and fractured during the 5 seconds of gravity's absence, would now experience an equally violent recompression. Planetary compression and earthquakes. The sudden return of gravity would exert immense pressure on the Earth's crust, mantle, and core, compressing them back into their previous configuration. This immediate, global compression would trigger earthquakes of magnitudes far exceeding anything recorded in human history, perhaps registering well over 10 on the Richter scale, if a scale could even measure such an event. Fault lines, having expanded, would now violently slam back together. Entire continental plates would shudder and buckle, creating new mountain ranges in an instant, or causing existing ones to collapse. The planet would ring like a bell, convulsing under the immense stress. Renewed volcanic eruptions. The recompression would also force magma and gases from the deep interior to erupt violently through any remaining fissures and volcanic vents. The planet would be dotted with an unimaginable number of hyper-eruptions, spewing ash and lava over immense areas, further adding to the devastation and obscuring the surface. Crustal reshaping. The combination of global impacts from falling debris and water, coupled with the immense internal stresses of recompression, would fundamentally reshape the Earth's surface. Old landforms would vanish, new ones would be violently created, and the familiar map of continents and oceans would be obliterated into an unrecognizable, scarred landscape. The planet would be a mosaic of impact craters, new mountain ranges, vast desolate plains scoured clean by water, and areas still smoking from volcanic eruptions. Planetary stability. The grim new reality. While gravity has returned, the Earth would be far from normal. Orbital stability in question. Although gravity is back, the Earth's 5-second drift away from its orbital path around the Sun would have given it a new, slightly altered trajectory. It might still be gravitationally bound to the Sun, but its orbit would be highly eccentric, perhaps dangerously so, leading to extreme temperature fluctuations and unpredictable seasons, if any life survived to experience them. The Moon, having drifted away from Earth, might not return to its original orbit, becoming a rogue body itself, or eventually being recaptured by Earth in a new, unstable path, or even colliding with Earth during a later pass. Atmosphere reformation. Slowly, while the atmosphere would be pulled back to Earth, it would take a very long time, potentially thousands or millions of years, for it to re-establish a stable, breathable composition. The initial return would be a chaotic mix of superheated gases, dust and vapor, utterly unbreathable and toxic. Water distribution. The oceans would eventually settle back into basins, but their original distribution would be completely altered. Vast new seas might form in newly created impact craters, while old ocean beds might remain exposed or become new land masses. The salinity and chemical composition of the oceans would be drastically altered by the heat, impacts, and mixing with crustal materials. A scarred silence, the end of an era. By the end of the 5th second, and the immediate aftermath of gravity's return, the Earth would be a scene of absolute silent desolation. The cacophony of the initial impacts would fade, replaced by a chilling quiet, punctuated only by the distant rumble of unprecedented geological activity, or the hiss of steam from boiling waters. There would be no survivors. The combined effects of vacuum, extreme cold, radiation, violent impacts, crushing pressures, supersonic winds, colossal tsunamis, and planet-wide earthquakes and volcanic eruptions would have ensured the complete and utter sterilization of Earth. No plant, no animal, no single-celled organism could have endured such an onslaught. The blue marble we once knew, teeming with life and vibrant ecosystems, would be transformed into a scarred, pockmarked and silent sphere, still orbiting the sun, but devoid of the intricate web of life that once called it home. It would be a monument to the silent, indispensable power of gravity, and a stark reminder of how utterly dependent our very existence is on the constant, unwavering presence of this invisible embrace. The brief absence of gravity would not just be a disaster, it would be the definitive end of an era, leaving behind a barren, newly sculpted world. The story of life on Earth would have reached its definitive, devastating conclusion.